Welcome back to the Power to Build Show, the podcast where we explore the trends, technologies, and people shaping the future of home building. I'm Marco.
And I'm Bryan. Today, we're joined by a globally recognized strategist and keynote speaker who's spent decades helping leaders unblock bold, unexpected paths to growth. Kaihan Krippendorff is the founder of Outthinker, a former consultant and author of multiple books, including Outthink to Competition. He's advised well over 300 companies, including dozens of Fortune 500s, and his frameworks have helped organizations rethink strategy, embrace innovation, and discover what he calls the fourth option.
Kaihan is also going to be one of the keynote speakers at this year's Build Smarter conference, which we're incredibly excited about. Today, we're diving into his journey, his insights on resilience and innovation, and how builders can outthink the competition in today's fast-changing market. Kaihan, welcome to the show.
I know I'm thrilled. Thanks, Marco. Thanks, Bryan, for having me. And I am excited to be in San Diego.
Awesome. And Kaihan, we have a few different segments of our podcast. This first segment's going to cover something you speak a lot about. It's strategic resilience in the times of disruption. When industries face downturns like home building is facing currently, what separate those who survive from those who thrive?
Yeah, so we did a study fairly recently. It was not yet published, but we looked at from 7,000 companies, we crushed them down to 44 companies that really are outperforming. And a big thing about it is sensing the headwinds and tailwinds and then flipping the headwinds to tailwinds. Unfortunately, that requires you to kind of rethink because often your business was built around a tailwind that now has become a headwind, which requires you to change the direction of your ship or direction of your sales. So like there's one company not within within home building, but there's a company that I work with called Siegfried Group, and they had kind of a traditional accounting firm. With you got a senior manager, a manager, you got the whatever project manager, and you got the consultants, and they would sell these projects on a pyramid. And then we just looked at some of the numbers, and what we realized was that gig working was just steadily growing for the last 2 decades. The percentage of employees, professional employees in the United States, who were independent gig workers was growing. So that one little trend, it wasn't yet a headwind. It was just sort of like a little kind of, I don't know, a breeze. Let's call it a breeze. And they said, well, maybe that breeze is going to become a tailwind if we can set ourselves right. So they basically saw that they adjusted, right? They had the agility, the strategic agility to adjust their sales, and they redesigned their model. So when you hire them, you're no longer hiring a partner, junior partner, manager. You're not holding a stack of people. You're hiring Marco. You're hiring Bryan. I want Bryan for 6 months to come work for me, and I don't need your expensive senior people.
Right.
So they switched that model. Anyway, they go from 25 million to approaching 500 million today.
Wow.
And it felt like just a subtle shift, but it is that agility to, so I guess there's 2 things. One is sensing the winds, where are they going, but having the agility to adjust your sales.
So currently home builders are experiencing a huge downturn in the market. With rising costs, there's higher mortgage rates, buyer expectations are all over the place. They're not really understanding their markets. Their leadership team, what mindset or strategic lens would help their leaders stay ahead in a downward market, other than, adjusting to these headwinds? What are some other tactics they could use?
Yeah, I mean, there are a number of kind of strategic mindsets. I think there are 36 strategic mindsets, but we all kind of have a few of them. And I think that in a commoditizing market in which you want to increase margins, there are certain mindset shifts that are helpful. One of them is, I call it two-front battle, but it's to think, what business are we really in? And so, like, for example, the mortgage rates compressing the willingness of buyers to buy, right? That is a problem, but in a way, you are monetizing mortgage rates right now, you could look at that as an opportunity. How would Goldman Sachs look at that? If you were a financial institution, you were actually not in the business of building homes, you were in the business of providing financing,
Right.
and you happen to do that as a builder, right? I don't know exactly, but if you put that mindset on, it would have you start thinking very differently about different mortgage structures, let's say, or different sources of capital, for example, right? So that's one. I think it's very powerful to ask, what business are we really in, and then shifting that, you know?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Kaihan,
Another one is just looking where the profit is pooling, like across,
Right.
if you look at the whole industry, where is the profit pooling? If profit is not pooling in building, but you're related, you're forward or backward integrated, is to chase the margin and say, how can I start participating in the front end or the back end? I don't know if I'm just making, I'm not a builder, but I'm just making this up. You know, maybe you should be more on the front end of sales, or maybe you should be more on the back end of management and collect your margin there. You know, why is milk the same price in every grocery store, and why is milk always the furthest away from where you enter the grocery store? Is because people, they look at the price of milk, and that influences what they think the relative price of everything else is. But when you're going down the milk, going to the milk, what do you pass? You're passing the cereal, you're passing the deli, you're passing all these high margin things. So, I don't know, profit pooling is another
and
really interesting.
I like how you
place to play.
said shifting your mindset and adjusting to, whatever's happening. We have here in Ontario, the housing market has really taken a downturn, and what builders have been doing is really asking their customers what they want. And it's when they understand exactly what they want, where their communities will sell out. They want a good price. They're not looking for the most expensive finishings, but they want enough space to,
Yes.
have a child or two. And that's really where they become successful, and those communities do sell out. So there is a shift happening right now, and I feel like it's very related to what you preach.
Yeah, and I think another pattern related to that, I think, is coordinate the uncoordinated. And if you can create kind of like modularity in your business so that you can create, like, let's say your homes are, I'm not saying a modular home, but there are certain aspects of the building of it that are standard.
Right.
And then you can then take that kind of standard components, and then on the front end, you can put different components of the design that customize it so that it is a lower or higher price home. It is for a young family, or a family with grown kids, or an empty nester family, right? You can segment the market, and without having to design and build an entirely new structure, or to build a whole entirely new construction chain, right? We can create the variability at the front end, and the cost of that is much lower.
Right. And that's pretty consistent with what a lot of the builders are kind of replicating nowadays.
Oh, great.
So, I mean, you're all about innovation, Kaihan. You've written about how, innovation doesn't have to necessarily come from R&D labs. Rather, it can come from within, right?
Yes.
Just wanted to kind of grab your insights on that. Like, how can companies sort of unlock creativity from, their frontline employees, middle managers, cross-functional teams, et cetera?
Yeah.
Like, can you share some insights on that?
Yeah, I mean, at first I would just make the point that you really should be doing that. You're leaving money on the table if you're not doing that. I just published something as we're recording this 2 days ago in Harvard Business Review. And in that research, what we show is that when a company finds a need in the market and they broadly broadcast that need internally, there's a 71.4% chance that the solution already exists in the minds of one of your employees, an engineer, a floor worker, or in your ecosystem. And so the innovation already is built, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is, in my research in my book before the last one, what I show is that 70% of society's most transformative innovations have come from employees. The ideas already exist. The innovators are already in your organization, right?
Yeah, right.
And There are really 7 barriers that you need to unlock. I think the ones that are maybe most relevant here that are related to what we talked about here is flexibility of business model, is that often someone will come up with a great idea, but the business model around the idea is inconsistent with your existing business model. You're going to be like, well, our salespeople, they don't visit that customer. Oh, that pricing model, that's not the way we price. We would have to change the way we operate, right? The physical experience, the branding is not consistent with our branding.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we need to do is we need to create that flexibility. That is either by training our internal innovators to do business model innovation and design a business model that doesn't create that organ rejection of the parent company, and or have flexibility in your business model, not have one business model, but be open to having multiple business models.
Right, right. No, that's an interesting take. So, Kaihan, kind of relating it back to your story, right? Like, was there ever in your journey like an unexpected innovator from inside an organization that you felt has, did something that completely changed the game?
Yeah. I mean, so many, but the one that inspired me to go down this path of like researching this, her name's Jean Faywall. She is an editor. You probably never heard of her, but if you have heard of Goosebumps, if you've heard of the Babysitters Club, if you've ever been part of a book club, a school-based book club, those are all her inventions.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so I was doing a workshop at the company that she was working at. She's still working out at Macmillan, one of the 4 large publishing companies, and she came up with this idea and she had a name for it. I won't go into like the whole idea, but let's just say that it ends up becoming, her idea is like, let's create a platform for would-be self-published authors to find their audience, because I have had some calls recently where a self-published author that's successful and tries to get a book deal with us, and we decline them. And then after they were successful, we go to them and we say, we'd like to publish your next book. I expect them to say, yes, finally, I get published by a real publisher. But what they're saying is, I don't know. I don't know if I need you. Because I got a million Facebook fans. They're going to buy the book. I can put a digital copy on Amazon. I'll keep 100% of the revenue. If I go with you, you're going to give me 30% of the revenue or 15% of the revenue. And so anyway, she creates this platform. And honestly, I thought at the time it wasn't going to go anywhere, because I do these workshops all the time, and often they don't go anywhere. A good success rate, by the way, of an internal innovation is 15%. Jeff Bezos said, if you have a 1 in 10 chance of 100 times payoff, you should take that bet every time. But the trick is you got to be ready to lose 9 times out of 10. So you do these workshops and you got to expect 9 times out of 10 they're not going to work. And that's a good ratio. But anyway, I was listening to the radio. I heard a story about this thing and it sounded like her. And so I called her up and I went down to her office on the Flatiron Building in New York and talked to her. And it became this thing that now is a huge platform where would-be self-published authors write their post their manuscripts, and they have hundreds and hundreds of avid readers who give them feedback, and it's almost like a co-creation of the manuscript between the artist and the audience. And what's great about that, you guys being like, tech, experts, what are you doing? You're finding product market fit before you build the product. And they do a competition, like a Dancing with the Stars kind of competition, and the winner, of course, gets a publishing contract. And they have never had the winner turn down their publishing contract. So there's another example of turning a headwind to a sailwind, right? What was going to be a fatal threat to their business model now becomes a tailwind.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And not to say that our audience are mostly, home building backgrounds. That is, we certainly have a vast sort of audience here. But tying this back into kind of home building, builders in general often operate very lean. What would you say? What can they do to empower their teams to innovate without necessarily big budgets?
Yeah. I mean, that's a beautiful thing about this era, is that the cost of innovating is coming down.
Right.
And that's both barriers for, you can just create digital twins. You can simulate for low cost. You can create apps without having coding skills. The cost to try something is much
Right.
lower. And so, and the other thing I would say is to just, we have this, we collapse the idea that for an innovation to be big, it has to cost a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't. Like, think of IKEA. What made IKEA great? What do we think of when we think of IKEA? Why did they disrupt the old industry of furniture retail?
They made it cheap and easily accessible, and they pretty much have everything available to them. Is that not what
Yes.
IKEA is all about?
Yes. And they can get it all to you, right? Because what they don't do is they don't construct the furniture. You construct the furniture, right?
Right.
That's kind of like the set.
Yeah.
And where did that come from? 10 years after its launch, there's one guy, he's a designer. He's designing a table at home, and he wants to take it to work to show him, and he can't fit it in his car. So what does he do? He takes the legs off, he folds them, and he puts it in his car. It's some Volvo, obviously, because they're from Sweden. And he gets there not just with the table, but with the idea. What if we sold the tables with the legs off?
Well,
How much does that cost?
Yeah.
Nothing. Well, Amazon Prime, their big innovation was, let's charge $79 per month, right? Rather than just charge for shipping. What did that do? They tested it out. What did it do? It turned someone who was like, let me look and see if I can get a good price on Amazon, to, I've paid $79. Let me get the most free shipping that I can. I'm just going to go to Amazon.
Yeah.
If you apply customer lifetime value to that, you've just like quintupled, 10x customer lifetime value. What's the cost of that? Nothing.
Yeah, and even with innovation, I just recently watched the movie. It was the Lay's movie, where one of their factory workers, he was a Spanish or Mexican individual. The flaming hot Cheetos. He knew what people wanted, and he called the president, told him about it, and he ended up, becoming the VP of marketing there. From
That's awesome.
So that's I think I love that story, and it's so simple, right? Be the CEO and pick up the phone.
Yeah,
your people have ideas. Pick up the phone. Yeah.
How would you recommend for a president or CEO to operate and field that many calls and field all those ideas? Obviously, you have a lot on your plate. What's a trick you could kind of impose or suggest to them?
Yeah. I think there's new ways to do it. The 3 ways to do it now are either process or culture or organizational structure. Process is like come up with a thing where people ideate and you got a filtering system and all that. That's kind of like obvious. Organizational structure would be carve out a team that will just cycle through those ideas quickly. Culture is like never say or celebrate failures, or Amazon's 2 pizza rule or whatever, right? But I think that AI is going to allow us to now solve this throughput problem, because there are basically 5 steps to solving the problem. One is surfacing ideas or searching for ideas. The next is matching needs with opportunities. The next is valuing them. The next is prioritizing them, and this is mobilizing action on them. And, it used to be that you'd have to send someone back and they would have to spend a half day to like come up with what's the total addressable market for this idea, what's the uptake like, what's the competition like, and then they would create a business case. But now, with ChatGPT or whatever you're using, you can do that in like 30 seconds. Throughput is so much better. So I would say, encourage your people to be AI first, especially around ideation and ID proposing, and you can just 10x your idea throughput.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's always something I'm curious about, even proposing new ideas to our president or whatever. It's like, I don't want to go up to him with something that's not going to work or something. So you're always nervous about it, but it'll often.
Let me say that is the fundamental problem with innovation, is that most large organizations, especially organizations that have an engineering culture, they adopt this prove, plan, execute model. Prove to me that the idea works, give me a business plan, and then I'll give you funding. You can execute on it. The issue is that precludes you from being able to do anything new. Why?
Right.
because the data does not yet exist to support whether the new idea will work. If you've got a product that no one's ever seen before, and I'm asking you to say, what is the adoption rate going to be for that product? The only way to get that data, because it doesn't exist, you can't go look it up, is to create it. How do you create it? You create an MVP, you put it in front of people, and you measure the adoption rate. And so that you need to move, like they're going to ask you to prove it, to do it. You have to do it in order to prove it. You have to overcome that. And so we have to allow people to conduct experiments and try things.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You know, you're often talking about the fourth option, the strategy that's not obvious, not safe, but transformative. How can, we talked about how leaders can train themselves to see it. Is there a personal moment where, you or a client discovered a fourth option that kind of changed everything?
I mean, the one that comes to mind for me, because it's kind of loosely related to home building, is this family, this couple. They had a company. They made windows, right? And the way they make the windows is, they would make the windows and then they sell them through whatever, not retailers, but retailers that would sell them to builders. And the thing was that these retailers, they didn't want to depend on just one. They loved the windows, and they were like, I'd love to sell only your windows, but if I sell only your windows, then you have a lot of bargaining power with me. And, this is not a good thing. So they always wanted to sell other windows. So they're like, how could we get our retailers to just sell our windows? Coca-Cola bottlers just sell Coca-Cola. Budweiser distributors just distribute Budweiser, but Windows, that doesn't exist. So they came with this so they came with this idea, and it was like, what if we bought them? All of them. Issue was that's expensive, and they weren't big enough to buy them all, and they didn't have the management to operate all these. But they had this idea. Anyway, I won't go the whole story, but they found a banker who would help them buy one of them with a creative financing structure. And the company that they bought was an owner who wanted to cash out, but they didn't want to retire yet. So they cashed out, but they continued operating the business, and they were paid a salary to operate the business. And once they proved that this model worked, they did it again and again and again. And in 3 years, they 10x their revenue. So here's a fourth option. And what usually is a fourth option idea sounds crazy. Any new idea, you can kill it just by 2 words, prove it.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, we are going to try to prove it. We can't prove it, but we're going to take action before we prove it. They figured it out, and that just exploded their revenue.
And I feel like that's what's going on with home building. Builders are always defaulting to familiar models, and that's what's been happening now. And we see the builders that are adapting and changing their product offering. Some of them are building homes with basements that have a rental unit in it, so they can offset that mortgage cost. So they're spotting the fourth option design, and pricing and that way. But is there any other way they can, based on what you said, spot that fourth difference?
I think I don't know if you there's a little framework. I'll just list it. I'll list out these 9 things, okay? And I think all models are wrong, and some are useful. This is this model that I've been working on for like 15 years. I could spend 3 days talking about this model. I'm going to give you 30 seconds on it. Here are 9 different areas that you can look for innovation. One is positioning, which is who's our core customer and what's our brand positioning and value proposition for them, right? Next is your product. What is the product that I sell across the value chain, type of building, for example? What's my pricing model, which includes mortgaging and financing? How can I play with that, right? What's the physical experience of working with me? Pre-build, build, even like the physical experience of the product, right? There is the placement, which is where am I going to build? What cities, and how do I deliver my services to them, right? There is, of course, our processes and operations to deliver on those on those kind of front end things. There are the people, which is who do I recruit? How do I organize? What is our culture? Like those are different ways to find fourth options. There is our purpose, which is what do we stand for, and do we stand for something that activates cooperation and among our ecosystem. And there's promotion, which is how do we get customers through our funnel? How do we get them aware to consider trial? How do we reduce customer acquisition costs? So there are 9 different doors that you can walk down to look for fourth options. And one of the reasons that people don't look for fourth options or don't find fourth options, even if they are willing to stop and say, I think I know how to solve this, but is there a fourth option? That's the first thing you should do. But the other thing is that they keep looking down the same door. They keep thinking, oh, it's the product. It's the product. It's the product. I need a new type of build. They don't think necessarily, oh, it's the pricing.
Right.
It's cool.
Oh,
And I
it's the
remember
positioning.
I was watching one of your I don't know, one of your I don't even know what to call it when you go and present one of your presentations, and it
Keynotes?
was about, one of your keynotes, and it was about the Chinese general who kind of
Yep.
created his own fourth option and blocked the river and had everyone go. So I'm not going to get into that story here. It's people want to.
But that's it. That's the fourth option. He had 3 options, and he found the fourth.
The fourth one, and
Dick Fosbury saw 3 options, and he went over the high bar backward. He saw the fourth. Yep.
That's awesome. So Kaihan, want to kind of talk to you about proximity and how kind of delivering value that's close to demand. And I know your recent work kind of explores the idea of proximity, which is kind of the notion that bringing value closer to the moment of need, right? Again, tying this back sort of into home building, what does this mean for industries like home building? Can you share some insights on that?
Yeah. So the idea of proximity is that across every sector, what we see is that value is getting created closer and closer to the moment of demand.
Mm-hmm.
And that is both in time, there's demand, I make the value, and space. The person who has the need, we create the value in front of them, right? And we usually create value by combining things. You have the Coca-Cola vending machine, the Freestyle, and you can go up to it. You can press a bunch of buttons. You can order a caffeine-free diet, cherry, vanilla, Sprite, and it will just make it for you right there. They can't afford to do that in the old model, because the old model was mix the syrup with the soda, which is creating the value in a bottling plant far away, weeks or months up ahead. But now we're waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting until we build, until we combine the things, right? So this is sort of like custom build, right? But what you need to think about is the value that we're actually delivering. And there are lots and lots of technologies that allow her to deliver that value later, whether that is digital twins, whether that is digital visualization and the ability to customize, whether that is 3D printing. We know that by 2030, Dubai has the intention that 25% of builds are going to be built with 3D printing.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? That is building the pieces closer to the point of demand. I was with the guy that manages the building of for the school buildings of school system for the school system of the county in Florida, and they have this issue that so many people are moving down here. It's hard for them to keep up. What they've started doing is adopting this approach where they don't build the components and then move them. They just move the cement, and then they lay out the shape, and then they build a mold right on site with the rebar and everything, and then they lift it up, and they can build 5 times faster. People who are listening to this, who know much more about this than I do, will know exactly what I'm talking about. This is not new technology. Mm-hmm. But my point is, the reason I'm sharing this not new technology is because this has been a trend that has been underway already for many decades. And so what this allows you to do is imagine what I call P = 0, proximity = 0, the moment at which your customer says, oh my gosh, we're pregnant. We need a new room for a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And boom, you're there building the home, and the next day they have a new home. Everything that is a step away, a moment or an inch away from that is an opportunity to innovate. And the
Yeah.
last thing I'll say is that you don't have to get to P equals 0. Um, Domino's Pizza, their stock price for this 10-year period that we studied, they outperformed Google. Why? Because they created the experience of getting a pizza earlier than their competition. They didn't even bring the pizza there faster. They just had an app and it said, it's being made, it's being QA'd, it's being boxed, it's being picked up, it's being shipped. And so we got the experience of proximity. So that's just like a little kind of easy thing. It seems easy, but it's not that easy. But
Right.
if you can just create a little bit of that proximity, you can beat your competition.
That's awesome. And Kaihan, one of your bestsellers, Outthink the Competition, I think it outlines, kind of strategic patterns that help leaders see versus, what others might miss. Which of those patterns do you feel that's most urgent today? And again, especially in today's climate, how can leaders in the home building space, or not necessarily home building, that is, how can leaders anticipate, where industry's
Yep.
going within the area?
Yeah. I mean, I would say there are three that are primarily there. One I think we already talked about is move early to the next battleground.
Mm-hmm.
And that, if you think about proximity, you skate to where the puck is going to be, not where the cut is. And I propose that the puck is going to be proximity. And so start thinking right now about what can I do to move there early and create proximity to move closer to P equals 0. Next one is coordinate the uncoordinated. Construction is a huge coordination problem, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have all of these people coming on, all of these different expertises and supplies and coming onto site and trying to coordinate. And yet we know 30% of the material that gets on a construction site goes to waste.
Right.
And then stuff that we use and then we dismantle afterwards and throw away is additional waste. If we took a macro view on that, this is an enormously inefficient coordination attempt. There are huge opportunities to coordinate. And the thing is that we can coordinate now more effectively because of IoT connected devices, creating data, the proliferation of data, advances in APIs are feeding us into AI, creating greater predictive and problem solving capacity that we can now coordinate things more efficiently. Imagine that the materials arrive just at the point that the person is reaching out to try to grab that material and not before, right? So I think coordinating the uncoordinated, we already have smart construction sites and things, but when those are integrated now with supply and even with sales up front, and I don't know, I'm just making this up. Your customer can see that their house is about to get installed. Windows are about to get installed that aren't the windows that they wanted, or they want to change. Well, I don't know. I'm just making this up. But like when we start seeing the different smart space across the supply chain, the smart arenas getting interconnected, that's huge. Coordinate the uncoordinated. And the last one I would say is be good. Relating back to this 30% waste issue, more and more people are making choices based off of the impact that it has on the environment. Part of that is just personal, but part of it is financial. And now that it's financial, like the cost of global warming, whether you believe in global warming or not, the cost of your insurance, the cost like flood insurance is going up. The cost of having to pay for carbon emissions, that's all going up. So there's a big drive towards more sustainable practices and creating more circular economy and sustainable housing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. Like, love your idea about coordinate the uncoordinated. I think, we preach that here at Constellation, kind of leveraging technology, having integrated
Yep.
systems to kind of overcome a lot of these things, right? So really
Right.
appreciate your insights
Yeah.
on that.
And Kaihan, we always do a quick 30-second quick fire little session at the end of our podcast, and
Great.
they're quick. Don't think about it. Whatever comes
Okay.
to mind first,
All
give
right.
us the answer.
All right.
So, what's one word that defines great strategy?
Foresight.
Bryan, take the next one.
Yeah, most underrated trait in a leader.
What's the word I'm looking for? I have it. It took me 30 seconds to come up with it, but I can't think of it. It's just emotional intelligence, something like that.
All right.
Okay, yeah. I was gonna
Emotional
say
intelligence.
adaptability if
Yeah,
you
I
asked
think.
me that question,
See,
but
'cause I think strategy is a human activity,
yeah.
and you can have the right answer, but if people are not on board, it's not going to happen. So you have to understand the human side of choosing,
Hmm.
of setting strategy. Yeah.
Got you. And a book besides your own that every builder or leader should read.
Oh gosh, I like Competition Demystified by Bruce Greenwald.
Okay.
He is known as the guru to value investing gurus. He's the person that Warren Buffett calls when he wants advice. He's a professor, and he just lays it down really simply.
Definitely check that out. Biggest myth about innovation.
I think we covered it before, that it's costly.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
last one, we're changing. Someone we had in our script here, coffee or tea while writing. If you want to answer that, you can. But I have another one after, and it's, what was the funniest thing that's ever happened to you on stage?
Oh my God, I think it was just only last week, man. Only last week. I had 1,000 people. They had told me an hour and 20 minutes, and 10 minutes before I go up, they told me, "Oh no, it's 44 minutes, and we uploaded your slides, and and the fonts are all wrong." So I had to figure out how to make that funny, but I made it funny.
I'm sure you
I
did
think that
a
was
great
it.
job
Yeah,
adapting to
yeah, yeah.
that.
Talking about adaptability.
Hopefully,
Exactly, right?
But I drink coffee. I drink
Yeah.
coffee.
hopefully Karen, our marketing vice president, gave you enough time. He's going to give you the right font, because you're going to be coming to Build Smarter, and you'll be presenting there for everyone listening. I'm sure they'll get to ask you, their own questions if they have any from this. And
I have a feeling you guys are super organized, so I feel in
We
good
try to
hands.
be. That's awesome, Kaihan. Honestly, Kaihan, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for giving us some time of your day
Awesome.
and sharing your
Awesome.
insights. If you could leave, our listeners, many of whom are, hold senior leadership titles, with one question to ask their teams tomorrow, what would that be?
It would be, and this relates to what Marcos alluded to before, the story of this general. He's about to about to step in the river and do the obvious thing. But he stopped, he stepped back, and he said, "What is the fourth option?" That's what I would say. Before you make a decision, just stop and
Hmm.
say, "What is the fourth option?"
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, and that's something that I for sure will get myself to start thinking about. Again, thank you so much, Kaihan. Again, really appreciate it. You've written various bestsellers like Outthink the Competition and Driving Innovations from Within. Where can people find you most and, purchase your books from?
I think LinkedIn is probably the best way to find me.
Okay,
LinkedIn. Yeah.
awesome.
Connect with me there. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Kaihan. Thank you to
Awesome.
our listeners as well. Kaihan's going to be at Build Smarter, like I mentioned. So, don't forget to subscribe, share, and stay tuned for more episodes of the Power to Build show.